Hey, welcome back. This is Coach Brown with Westside Football Academy. This is part two of the off-season camp series. So what we're going to do is we're going to start by talking about prospect camps and what some of the pros and cons and the differences are when it comes to prospect camps. So first off, these are my personal favorite when it comes to all the camps that are out there, because prospect camps are usually on a campus of a particular school and they work with a particular set of coaches from a specific football program. Now, just like with the other camps we discussed, what you'll see is an opportunity for your player to go through and get their measurables, height, weight, in addition to some of those others, and their testing done in the early parts of the day. Also, when it comes to the current program's football coaches, the actual position coach your player can play for, if they go to that school, is going to be working with your player in drills throughout the course of the day. That's one of the reasons that I love it, is because you have a chance to see what's the relationship like between your player and that position coach, which they'll see and work with the majority of the time if they get on campus and eventually play for that football program. It also gives your player a chance to see, what do the football facilities look like? I mean, things like the weight room, the stadium, indoor practice facilities, players lounge, and anything else like that. But either way, what you're trying to do is to get a feel for not only what are the coaches like, but can you see yourself or see your player being comfortable and confident if they went to school in that particular campus. Next, you also have a chance to usually meet the head coaches, offensive or defensive coaches, position coaches, and recruiting coordinators for your areas. So one of the things you really want to be able to do is to take pictures, shake hands, get to meet people, and the more exposures they have to you and you to them, the more comfortable you start to feel with this whole recruiting process. But prospect camps are a great way to get that first couple exposures done, and for those coaches to see how your player performs and takes coaching on the football field. Typically, there's going to be multiple dates for each campus when it comes to prospect camps. So right here, we're looking at Indiana State University, Ball State University, Purdue, IU, Notre Dame. Usually they'll have 3, maybe 4 different prospect camps and dates for your player to come in and compete and show their skills. So if you can't make one, hopefully you can make one of the others. Otherwise, you have to prioritize one camp or another in case they're all conflicting dates when it comes to your football camp calendars. So these are, in my opinion, the best value, because you get actual position coaches that are working with players, and those coaches have to do a really good job of teaching players how to play and be efficient. So in that way they can keep their jobs, because they're relying on 18, 19, and 20-year-olds to compete on the field in order for them to win games. So in that way their coaches don't flip because they didn't have a competitive or a good enough success rate. But usually these are the best value, because some prospect camps or elite camps or whatever they're named are going to be $20, some $30, some $40, but very few we find them $50 and higher. So very good cost, and you get a really good bang for your buck when it comes to these prospect camps. Now, I talked a little bit about position coaches before, and when it comes to position coaches, that is the most important relationship between your player and that school. The position coach is going to have probably 60 to 70% of your player's time whenever they get on campus and they play for one of those programs. So it's almost like their father or their uncle whenever they leave the house. So what you're looking for is somebody that is going to be a good coach, that's a good person, that would hopefully give them the same life and football advice that you would give them back home. It doesn't help if they're going to be also a good role model and model some of the things that they're preaching to their players. So definitely make sure that you do a really good job of not only evaluating, but meeting and getting a feel for what type of person that position coach is, and if you feel comfortable with your player staying with them for 4 or 5 years if they come to that particular school. The next thing to look at for some of these camps is the facilities. Now, we mentioned these before, but these are the different facilities that you want to look at and evaluate and eventually compare one school versus another. So stadiums and practice fields, pretty self-explanatory. But between the locker room and the weight room, you don't usually get a chance to see those unless you're there for a prospect camp. So those are good opportunities to take pictures and be able to see what you like and maybe don't like about what each school has set up. Next, if there's an indoor practice facility and you have access to it, definitely take some pictures and evaluate it. See where the players will get their ankles and their wrist taped before practices by viewing the athletic training areas. Take a look at any player meeting rooms or offense or defensive meeting rooms, and also start to get a feel for the nutrition stations that are available either in the weight rooms or in some separate area where they're providing protein shakes and vitamin packs and things like that for the players. So definitely get a glimpse of what the program facilities look like and then be prepared to compare them versus other programs. So prospect camps are a great time to do those things. Okay, at this point, we've talked about the different types of camps. Now, let's talk about how to get ready for all of them. So this section, we're just going to label preparing for camps. And what we're going to get into is what do we need to do or to have or to bring with us when it comes to each of the camps. So first, before we go to a camp, do your homework and make sure that you, A, register online if you haven't already. B, complete the recruiting questionnaire because the recruiting questionnaire gives you a chance to get on their radar. You also have a chance to be uploaded into their mailing list and their email distribution lists for when they have different events going on. That way, it's easy for recruiting coordinators and coaches to find you because you've already registered and put your name, your address, your phone number, your Twitter handle, and everything else inside of their database. Next, it'll save you a ton of time if you can complete waivers before you show up on campus. Next, you want to make sure you're preventing conflicts. So block any of the specific prospect camps on your schedule so you don't put another prospect camp on the same date at the same time. And next thing you know, you have conflicts and can't make it to one or the other. Make sure you communicate with your high school coaching staff and let them know that you plan on attending a certain camp. And definitely don't do it on the same day that you've got a high school event that's scheduled with your high school program. Your high school program should always come first, and then everything you do with and for college should be a supplement or should be a complement to that football schedule through your high school. Also, make sure that in some cases you contact your recruiting coordinator that's recruiting players in your area so they know that you're coming. As long as your recruiting coordinator knows you're coming, they'll set up a lanyard for you, or they'll get you a name badge, or they'll do whatever they can to make sure that you have everything you need at the registration table whenever you show up. Sometimes if you don't communicate with that recruiting coordinator and they don't know that you're there, they'll do the best they can on short notice, but it sometimes makes things a little bit awkward because now they can't set up maybe specific coaches to meet with you, or maybe have you see or get access to different parts of the facilities. Also, before you show up, whether it's on the drive up or days in advance, take a look at the football program's information. You can go online and see what's their win-loss record. You can see what their conference is, maybe who their rivals are. You can see any players that are standouts and anything else that's going on with their football programs. You can also do the same thing by looking at Twitter, aka X, just to see what the latest and greatest is. But either way, don't get caught off guard in case you're talking to a coach and you're engaged in small talk and you have no idea what they're talking about because you didn't take a look or didn't take the time to learn about their program. Typically, when you're online, you're going to fill out these recruiting questionnaires. And again, you're going to put in simple information like name, address, phone number, email address, Twitter handle, so forth and so on. So be prepared to provide all of this information and do it online because it'll save you a ton of time. Next, study the program. So we talked about studying the program and not just looking at the program. I'm a big fan of understanding the faces and knowing the pictures of the head coaches, the recruiting coordinators, the position coaches, and the offensive and defensive coordinators too. But when you have a chance to study the program, you know when the offensive coordinator comes up and talks to you because you had a chance to see what their picture looks like before you ever got on campus. Next, if your program is Division I FBS, usually there's magazines like you see on the screen here that you can find out all sorts of detail about the program this year, last year, and maybe information about their players and some different things going on with their coaching staffs. So these are really good ways to learn about the programs. And each of these books usually costs about $12 to $15 and are generally published after spring ball, so around the month of May. But usually you can find them at Targets, Walmarts, definitely your bookstores, but they'll give you an inside look because they evaluate every program in Division One football, and they usually have 2, 3, sometimes even 4 pages of information about just that program. So that's a good way to go ahead and do some research before you show up on campus. Everything else you can usually find out just by looking at the team's website and anything that they posted for the outside world to see. But as they do that, definitely do your homework so once you get engaged in conversation, you've got all sorts of stuff to talk about related to the program while you're on campus. Next up, we've done our research, we've filled out the questionnaire, we've done everything online. Now it's time for us to pack the car, get ready to jump in and go to campus. Make sure that you're taking the basics of t-shirts, shorts, socks, all that kind of stuff. Matter of fact, depending on if it's going to rain or not, if you're outside, you may want to have backups for all of those. Then definitely make sure you've got your cleats. And I always recommend putting those in the car the night before so that way you don't forget them. Then you want to wear gym shoes. Sometimes if you have to go indoors because of the rain or the cold or lightning or anything else, and they don't allow you to wear cleats inside, you don't want to be caught trying to do drills in Crocs or any kind of slides. Definitely make sure you take gym shoes and cleats and you're prepared for indoor and outdoor conditions. After that, 90% of the players will have some kind of a drawstring bag to bring their cleats in, their towels, their gloves, and anything else. So if that's your player, make sure they've got that kind of stuff with them, and little drawstring bags are a great way to do it and not be too bogged down with bags and heavy equipment. If you're a quarterback, definitely should take a football with you. Make sure you've got your name on it big and bold. And quarterbacks are known for traveling around with their favorite footballs to go ahead and run and perform drills with. Also, most camps will have all sorts of water and some will have sports drinks available, but I always recommend taking your own just in case there's either too many people or the breaks aren't long enough for everybody to get a drink when they give you time to get a drink. That way, you can definitely have something that's available for your player so you don't dehydrate while you're there on site. Also, sometimes these camps might last an entire day. So if we're talking about 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. or something like that, it's tough to go ahead and keep yourself fueled throughout the course of the day. So they may provide some kind of a lunch, but always make sure you take any appropriate snacks so that your player can keep their energy levels up while they're competing in different drills, especially going against guys that are bigger, faster, stronger that they don't usually see on a regular basis. Good snacks would be maybe some chips just to get the salt. Next, maybe some fruit or some kind of protein shake or protein bars just to keep themselves going where you're not getting too full, but you're not running on empty throughout the course of the day either. All those are ideas for for players to take, but we also want to make sure that the parents are ready for some of these long days too. So when it comes to parents, make sure that you're taking something to record your player and get their highlights for the day. So take a camera, take a phone, take some kind of a iPad or tablet. So in that way you can capture the video and eventually edit it and be able to use it for social media posts somewhere down the road. Also, because some of these days are long, sitting on aluminum bleachers or concrete bleachers is a pain in the butt, literally. So take any sort of stadium chairs or anything else that'll make your time on the bleachers a little bit more comfortable. Next, for longer trips, pack a cooler. One of the ways that you can not only save money but be very prepared is by packing a cooler full of drinks, fruit, snacks for your player and for yourself. That way, you don't have to spend a bazillion dollars for a concession stand, or if there's no concession stand, you're stuck without eating throughout the course of a long day. Next, parents. At some point, you know your player is going to forget something important. So have backup gear ready. Backup gear like an extra t-shirt, towels, gloves, cleats, anything else that may prevent them from competing, or you having to run out and buy something at the local Dick's Sporting Goods or something like that because your player forgot stuff back at the house. So have some of those extras ready to go. Put them in the car the night before. So if your player forgets, you've got their back. Next, when it comes to some of the things that people might need on a long, hot day, especially during the summertime, you may want to have sunglasses, suntan lotion for folks, bug spray depending on where you're at, also blankets and umbrellas depending on the types of weather that you're dealing with or the surfaces that you're sitting on. Lastly, you want to have some program information that you can look at as a parent that'll give you some information about the school, the coaches, or the football program in general. So once you have a chance to talk to coaches, you got some things to talk about and some small talk conversations too. Next up, we've got some miscellaneous tips and follow-ups right before we wrap up. But when it comes to tips and follow-ups, my son actually provided some of these as a player and with his experience. But first off, in terms of what you should wear and show up in, high school athletic gear is always a good idea. That way, the coaches have a chance to know who you are, where you're from, and connect your name and your school so they can go back and visit you during your high school regular season. Next, make sure you wear something memorable that makes you stand out versus the crowd. If you're at a camp that's got 100 or 200 football players on the field at the same time, they usually look pretty similar because almost everybody has black shorts. And usually, once they give you a shirt, the shirts all look alike too. So if you've got some kind of a headband, wristband, something that you wear around your leg or your knee or your ankle that's maybe fluorescent or bright or stands out, that's a really good way for coaches and for parents to find you, to take video, and for coaches to remember who you are. Yeah, I love that wide receiver that had the fluorescent green wristband on his right arm. Yeah, he was a stud. What was that guy's name again? And next you know, they're trying to find your player based off of what they wore that made them stand out. Something for the players is we want to make sure that when you're competing against some of these other players that are vying for spots on the campus or at an exposure camp or wherever, you want to make sure you're making friends and having some fun. Because this journey, you're going to see a lot of the same faces traveling with you from campus to campus or exposure camp to exposure camp. So get to the point where you're making friends, you're being social, and when it's time to compete, but definitely cheer each other on and create some friendships and some bonds as you go throughout the course of your recruiting process. Next, when it comes to being social, a lot of times teenagers don't like talking to adults, or at least not having lengthy conversations. At least my kids don't. So at some point, start becoming more comfortable and familiar with shaking hands, making direct eye contact, and engaging in a small talk conversation for about 5 minutes with an adult. And that adult is usually a recruiting coordinator, maybe a position coach, offensive or defensive coordinator, or a head coach. In all situations, as you're going to camps and you're taking snacks and drinks and things like that, clean up after yourself and leave the place better than you found it. No one likes a player who has a banana, some chips, and maybe a protein bar and leaves their trash on the field. Matter of fact, that's one way for players to get recognized by coaches as somebody they may not want on their football programs. So clean up after yourself and sometimes clean up after the guy or girl next to you. So that way, again, you're leaving the situation and the environment better than you found it. Last bit of advice here is as you're going through different drills, I always recommend either being the first in line or the second in line when it comes to each drill. And if you're consistently first or second, usually you're a little bit more memorable in the minds of the coaches working with you. So that way, it's almost like giving yourself extra advertising. Now, personally, I like being the second player in line because after the first player goes and they may not have got the drill right, once they get coached up, you have an opportunity to be one of the first two, but you have the first one to do the drill correctly, especially after you've heard the coaching about the player right there in front of you. So I always recommend being the first or second player in line to be memorable. And again, second player in line can benefit from the first guy's coaching. Now, once you have a chance to get to the second part of the day, usually there's some sort of competitive situations where you're going against another player and you have a chance to win whatever win means for your position. So be prepared to compete, be prepared to give your best effort, and pick your matchups very carefully. What you want to do is sometimes go against the best, or you may want to go against the person that gives you the best shot to look good in the eyes of the coaches. Either way, be ready to compete, be ready to win the drill. Now, in between, when your rep is over, make sure you show that you're having fun. High five, congratulate other players, get excited for other players. And once you start getting hyped up, it changes the environment. And next thing you know, everybody's having a good time, everybody's competing, and your player becomes more memorable because they're able to impact the mood of those drills and impact the other players that they're working with. Next, when it comes to any sort of drills or even just walking around fields and courts and anywhere else you might be, make sure you're projecting confidence by standing up straight, keeping your chin level, making eye contact with people, and communicating with coaches, recruiting coordinators, and anybody else that's working for that program. I always recommend for players to come on in and be prepared to challenge themselves by trying to get the best times and the best measurements than what they had in previous camps. Also, when it comes to performing specific drills, always try to get better the next drill than you did the last time you performed that same drill. Hopefully that way coaches know that you're working hard trying to improve, and they see that you're a coachable player where once they give you instruction, you actively try to implement whatever they just taught you. From there, I also want to caution you're there to compete and you're there to win, but you also are not meant to be on somebody else's highlight film. So make sure you do your best so that way you don't show up on somebody else's highlight film as that player getting beat that makes them look good and makes you look worse. So make sure that you're competing and you're doing your best so that situation doesn't happen to you. Now, again, you're going up against players that are probably not in your conference and they're from other parts of your state or other parts of your region. So now you're going up against some of the best of the best, and you've got to bring your best performance to go along with your best competitors that you're going up against. Next, my son had a couple of tips for players in general, just so I had a chance to pass this along whenever I did some of these. So first, he highly recommended that offensive players wear really, really tight shirts or sleeveless shirts so you don't get held during some of your drills. Defensive line, same thing. Make sure you're wearing something either tight or sleeveless so offensive linemen don't hold you during the drills. No, I mean, offensive linemen never hold, so that's not a thing. Also, don't wear schools from another program, or especially competing schools, to the program that you're going to. So if you're going to a University of Michigan camp, don't wear Ohio State gear. If I'm going to a Ball State camp, don't wear anything that belongs to a program from the MAC. Only wear shorts, t-shirts, or whatever gear that you've got from the school that you're going to, and that's it. Another idea is be in shape. When you show up on campuses and you're doing some of these exposure camps or you're doing some of these prospect camps, you don't want that to start to, you don't want to use those as an opportunity to get you in shape for the season. You should already be in some of your best shape so you can give your best measurements, tests, scores, and times to the people that are paying attention. The next thing you want to do is make sure you're learning coaches' names. So hopefully you had a chance to research them early, and then once you see them, you can match up a face to the name and remember who they are. But definitely don't go calling coaches by the wrong name. So if you ever happen to forget a name, just tell them or just call them coach. Then from there, have fun. And regardless of whether you're a player or you're a parent, enjoy the experience, enjoy the trips because it goes by really, really fast. 4 years in high school will go by just like that. And the next thing you know, your player is no longer doing any of this recruiting stuff, at least hopefully not, and they stay at their school for the next 4 to 5 years. So enjoy the ride, have fun, and use that as a great bonding experience between your player and yourself as a parent. Now, once the camps are over, what you want to do is you want to follow up by thanking the coaches physically, face to face, shaking their hands and taking some pictures. Let them know you enjoyed. Let them know you had a great time. Let them know that you appreciate being on campus, whether they invited you or you just signed up and showed up on your own. Let them know that you're excited to be there and you appreciated the experience. Next, take pictures with the coaches and feel free to post those on social media just to let people know at your high school or at other programs where you had a chance to go and what camps and events you had a chance to participate in. You also want to make sure that at some point you thank everybody that's a non-coach for some of the things they've done to put on the day too. Equipment managers, athletic trainers, or maybe recruiting coordinators that aren't coaches all do a lot of work just to make sure you have a great experience as a camper whenever you're on campus or whenever you're at that exposure event. Make sure at some point when you're driving home or flying home that you evaluate the day and you think about what did you do well and what are some areas you might need to improve on. That way you can constantly get better as you go from camp to camp to camp throughout the course of the off season. Then, depending on your relationship with a recruiting coordinator or position coach, send a thank you DM or a thank you email or maybe a phone call, again, depending on the relationship that you got with the school and depending on the contact time period that's going on as well. After that, you can always post on social media, similar to what you see here, and tag the people that helped make that day special for you. Whether it was a recruiting coordinator, position coach, or maybe it's someone else that's responsible for recruiting, make sure that you're tagging everybody in addition to your high school program so that way you get more exposure, more shares, hopefully more likes, and more exposure and love for the videos that you put out from those camps. If anyone has specific questions about the camps that are on the screen here, these are some of them we had a chance to go to throughout the course of our 4 or 5 years of our players recruiting journey. So if you have specific questions, feel free to email me at wsfootball@outlook.com and we can talk about the ins, outs, and specifics of any of these that you see right here on the screen. So that's going to do it. So we had a chance to discuss types of camps, scheduling, agendas, measurements, testing, and things like that, mainly in part one of this episode. But this time through, we picked up with the rest of the camps and then do's and don'ts, how to prepare, and the follow-ups. So if there's any parts of this you need to watch again, feel free to rewind it back, feel free to pause it, and feel free to share the link with anybody else that you think might be interested. So again, if you have questions, definitely feel free to reach out at wsfootball@outlook.com. Matter of fact, it's right here at the bottom of the screen. So if you have specific questions, send them to me. I'll get back to you as quickly as I can. Also, if you'd like to support our efforts here, help us to pay for our Zoom account, our website, and some of our behind-the-scenes admin, feel free to use the QR codes on the screen and feel free to drop us a tip if you found some value. If not, that's absolutely fine. And these things are free because we just like sharing the information and having you learn from our experience. Outside of that, if you're looking for a player that needs work in the offseason, if they're 11 years of age, all the way up to about 20, feel free to look us up for either individual workouts, small group sessions, or camps. And we'll usually post those not only on our website, but also on our Facebook page as well. So that's going to do it for today. Thank you all for coming out. God bless and good night. Again, this is Coach Brown with Westside Football Academy, hopefully giving you some great information about the camps that are going to happen in the offseason for your player. Take care.